What is happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We are going to get into Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya 2. If I'm not mistaken, that one goes down this weekend. Whoa. This, of course, is the rematch and the first fight. Israel Adesanya, dominant win, stopping Robert Whittaker, knocking him out. Very shocking result. Whittaker has always known to be a well-rounded, pound-for-pound, great, awesome champion, great fighter. Israel Adesanya dispatched him. Now, there are some specific reasons why that happened. We will cover that in this breakdown. We're going to talk about how the second fight could play out. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with Robert the Reaper Whittaker. Fan favorite, like I said, fantastic fighter. The Reaper has fought across two divisions, welterweight and middleweight. Some of his stats: 31 years old, still a young man, 5'11", 73-inch reach. Mixed martial arts record: 23 wins, 5 losses. 9 wins via KO/TKO, 5 wins via submission. Robert has been stopped 2 times by knockout and 1 time via submission. He's a very diverse martial artist, having a black belt in Hapkido, a black belt in Goju Ryu Karate, and a black belt in BJJ. Not to mention extensive boxing training, kickboxing skill. Whittaker is a complete fighter. He has the physical ability, he has the fight IQ, he's got the killer instinct, super tough, extreme will to win. One of the greats, like I said. Right now, Whittaker is on a 3-fight win streak, very impressive wins. In those 3 wins, he defeated Kelvin Gastelum, Jared Cannonier, and Darren Till. No finishes, but unanimous decisions in all 3 wins. Moving on now to the current middleweight champion, Israel Adesanya. Adesanya is 32 years old, 6'4", 80-inch reach. He's competed in multiple sports. Boxing record: 5 wins, 1 loss. Kickboxing record: 75 wins, 5 losses. And finally, mixed martial arts record: 21 wins, 1 loss. In his mixed martial arts record, 15 wins via KO/TKO. That's a pretty high stoppage ratio from strikes. Now, Adesanya is a purple belt in BJJ. He has really been working on his grappling and his wrestling. Extensive kickboxing background and training. He is a striking expert, no doubt about that. One of the elite standing, one of the best we've ever seen striking. That's just what it is. Adesanya won his last fight against Marvin Vettori. Pretty dominant win, unanimous decision. He lost his fight prior to that against Jan Blachowicz, moving up to light heavyweight. That was a risk. He went for the light heavyweight title. Props for the attempt. Alright guys, how could this fight possibly play out? Well, I think the mistake in the first fight was that Robert Whittaker was very predictable. He was predictable in his combinations. He didn't mix things up. He said it himself, he fought emotionally. And truthfully, as I was watching the fight, I saw that counter hook coming. Whittaker kept ending his combinations with an overhand. And that's one of his finishing strikes at the end of a combination. He loves to throw that overhand. Sometimes he'll throw a low kick, then throw an overhand, and if it misses, he'll transition into a takedown. Sometimes the punch will be for the takedown, more of a distraction, giving his opponent something to worry about. But yeah, he throws it a lot. And Adesanya was just waiting for it. Timed him, slipped his shot, countered, got the knockout. Who do I consider the more complete fighter? Honestly, Robert Whittaker. I think Robert Whittaker is more skilled overall. I think he brings more to the table. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's the better fighter. Because on that night, Israel Adesanya was the better fighter. Being the better fighter means putting it all together. That means the mental aspect, the physical aspect, the skills. Adesanya showed up. Robert Whittaker didn't. Now, Robert Whittaker fighting at his very best, that's a different fight. Are we going to see that Robert Whittaker in this second match? I hope so, because it's going to be an awesome fight. If Whittaker doesn't show up at his best, I think we're going to get a similar result as the first fight. Keys to victory: For Robert Whittaker, well, I kind of touched on it already. Robert has to mix things up. He needs to use his full arsenal, his full skill set. He is more skilled and well-rounded than Israel Adesanya. I think he has a better ground game, way better top position. I think he has better BJJ, better wrestling, better control. I think he's better at chaining things together, the striking with the grappling, similar to Georges St. Pierre. Israel is like 80% striker, maybe more. I wouldn't say he's one-dimensional, but his striking game is so strong, that's what he relies on. His ground game is coming along, but he uses it more defensively. Whittaker touched on Jan Blachowicz's path to victory, what he did. And honestly, I think it's easier said than done. Jan Blachowicz is Jan Blachowicz. Robert Whittaker is Robert Whittaker. They're two completely different fighters. Both are a different size. And I don't think necessarily that Robert Whittaker can control and hold Adesanya down in the same manner that Jan Blachowicz did. I think it was easier for Jan because he's just a bigger guy. He weighed a lot more than Izzy on fight night. Whittaker's going to have a tougher time controlling Izzy. Izzy is deceptively strong. His anti-wrestling, defensive wrestling keeps getting better and better. He's developing a great ability to get back up on the feet. He knows how to use the cage well, to have his back against it, to use it as leverage to stay standing. This is not an easy fight for Robert Whittaker at all. Very tall task defeating Israel Adesanya. Some of that is a style matchup. I think standing, Adesanya definitely has the edge. But things can equalize again if Robert Whittaker mixes things up. But he can't force things. He can't force takedowns. He can't just shoot from the outside with no setup. Izzy's going to read that, catch him with a kick, catch him with a knee, or just use footwork to get out of the way, frame out with his hands, reset, and pick Robert apart on the feet. Robert has to fight smart standing. He has to pose some kind of a threat on the feet himself in order for his grappling and wrestling to be effective. And then when the grappling and wrestling is effective, Israel Adesanya is going to think about that, think about the threat of the takedown, think about being held down, which actually opens up striking for Robert Whittaker. I think if Robert Whittaker fights at his very best, throws his full arsenal at Israel Adesanya, manages to get the fight to the mat, beat up on Izzy a little bit with ground and pound, soften him up, drag him into the later rounds, repeat this process, I think he can win a decision. I don't necessarily think he would finish Adesanya, but I think at his best, yes, he can eke out this win. I actually favor Adesanya in this rematch. I think he stopped Whittaker once. I believe he thinks he can do it again. The confidence level is there. That's super important. That might be in the back of Whittaker's mind, like, hey, this guy stopped me once. So definitely momentum, confidence has to be with Adesanya. If Izzy manages to stuff those takedowns, to keep it on the feet, I do think he's going to have the decisive advantage standing, and I do think he will win that striking battle. And I think it's very possible that he stops Whittaker again. Izzy looks in great shape. He's not a thick guy, but the last I saw of him definitely looked muscled for his frame, looks motivated. I think he knows exactly what Whittaker has to do to win, and I think he is going to have answers for that. So if I have to put a ratio on this fight, I'm going to say 60-40 Israel Adesanya. And it would not shock me one bit if he manages to stop Robert Whittaker again. Just to touch on a little bit more of what Izzy has to do. Izzy has to use footwork. He has to circle. Don't get crowded against the cage. Chip away at Robert Whittaker. Land those low kicks. Take the explosiveness out of his legs. Hurt his movement. Be aware that Whittaker is going to mix up striking with takedowns. He's going to try to explode on Adesanya with strikes. Then barrel into him. Transition into like a double leg, a single. Corral him to the cage. He can't let that happen. In a nutshell, stuff the takedowns. Use good footwork. Try to keep the fight in the center of the cage. He's going to have the striking advantage. Feints are going to help. Keep Whittaker guessing, but that's what Adesanya does anyway. He's very tricky on the feet. low kicks, use that range, use that jab. And when Whittaker gets frustrated, gets desperate, explodes, lunges forward into some wild combination, the counters are going to be there. Anyway, guys, final pick. I do think Adesanya is going to do it, but we'll see what happens. 60-40 Izzy. You let me know in the comment section who takes this fight and why. Are you excited for it? I know I am. If you enjoyed this segment and is your first time at the channel, hit that subscribe button, like and share, helps the channel grow. Appreciate it, guys. And until the next segment, you all take care. After the fight, we'll come back and talk about it. Later, guys.